Our speaker today is a man who has had a front row seat in some of the greatest sports events in history. He has interviewed the biggest names, covered the biggest events, and turned in some of the biggest expense accounts in TV history. He has won 19 Emmys and is in the Minnesota Hall of Fame. He has written 2 books, Silent Impact and The Impact Blueprint. Brace yourself for impact. Please stand and welcome Joe Schmit.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I should take a selfie. I haven't had a standing ovation in my life. Scott, you did a great job, but there's one new thing I have to add to my introduction. I recently became a certified grief counselor. Yeah, you see, I'm used to dealing with pain and agony. I've covered Minnesota professional sports for 37 years. That's a lot of pain and agony. My goodness, famous Ray, Fancy Ray is here. Oh my goodness. And Don Silvera is a person I've realized you can never say no to. Because believe me, I tried. And then my man, the legendary Manny Style. Manny, by the way, I don't know if you know, Manny is in the National Speakers Hall of Fame. And when he was in Albert Lee as a kid, they used to call him the Albert Lee Flash. So, you know, he's maybe lost his step, but he's still there. I'm going to do a couple things a little bit different today, because I've been here before, so I'm going to try to do a few things a little bit different. This is only one of the few places that'll ever have me back. I want to talk about culture. Because you have a culture in your business, in your family, in this club, in any organization that you belong to. If you're not giving your people a reason to stay, they are as good as gone. 90% of the businesses today have the same issue, recruiting and retaining talent. Now, you can keep your talent really easily. Just pay them 20 to 25% more. Or you can do it the sustainable way by developing a culture-first mindset. What's a culture-first mindset? Culture-first mindset is when you put strategy behind culture. Culture is more important than strategy. Where people are more important than profits. That's right, I said people are more important than profits. But now you're thinking, who's this whack job and why am I going to listen to him for the next 3 hours? When you develop a culture-first mindset, you build an organization where everybody wants to be there, where everybody wants to be productive, and everybody feels valued. You see, you can make culture your competitive advantage in today's tough economy. The smart ones do it. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. Hi, I'm Joe Schmit. I'm sure most of you maybe know that I write a couple of books. I'm on TV once in a while. For those of you who don't know, I've been on TV for a while. You're looking at a living, breathing, broadcasting legend. So that's actually not the truth. My ratings are so bad, I'm in the witness protection program. But I study people who make an impact. I've written books on people who make an impact. And if you want to make an impact on your culture, you need to be more aware and more intentional with that impact that you have. I live by the research we did. We found out there is the 60-60-60 rule. I don't use a lot of statistics, but these are the only statistics I'll use. And they come from LinkedIn, ADP, and McKinsey. So they come from great places. 60% of the people before they apply for a job look at the culture of the organization, before they even apply for the job. 60% of the people are more likely to stay in your organization if they feel connected to people they work with and connected to the organization and the mission of the organization. And last but not least, 60% of the people say they will work harder if they are acknowledged and valued by the organization. With those numbers, we came up with Culture First Mindset and the 3 C's of Culture First Mindset. Compassion, connections, and clarity. Compassion. You have to let your people know you care. Not only about them professionally, but them personally. Connections. What are you doing to connect to your people, and what are you doing to have people within your organization or your group connect with each other? The little exercise we did here with The Optimist was a great connecting exercise. Sometimes people don't take time to connect. And last but not least is clarity. And clarity is the catalyst of growth. People need to know what their role is, why that role is important, and that it is for something more than just making a profit for the company, especially the younger generation today. They want to work for the greater good. It has to be something more than just collecting that paycheck every 2 weeks. That's how you make culture your competitive advantage. Some people say to me, Joe, those are soft skills. And I said, yeah, try to succeed today without those soft skills. The ones who master those soft skills are the ones that make it their competitive advantage. We all need to be a little bit more aware and intentional of our role within the organization, within the culture of the organization, because everybody is responsible for the culture. Much like everybody's a leader, everybody's part of the culture. And we all need to be more aware and intentional with the impact that we have and how powerful it is. I'll give you just a couple examples. Under the sign of compassion, Children's Hospital in Minneapolis during the pandemic, when all of a sudden all the doctors and nurses and staff had to wear masks and they had to wear shields and they were dressed like they were in hazmat suits, one of the nurses at the Children's Hospital recognized that the kids that they had been taking care of the last couple of months were all of a sudden afraid of the people that they'd been working with. So on her own, she went and took a big smiling picture of everybody's face. And over the weekend, she made everybody new name tags. And on Monday, everybody on her floor was wearing a new name tag with a big smile on their face. And when they started taking care of the kids, they would point to the name tag and point to their face. It changed everything. By the end of the week, every single member, every single person working in the hospital had a new name tag with the big smile. The awareness and the intentionality made an impact. It changed the culture. With the lights on. Anytime Fitness is a client of mine. And Anytime Fitness lets people know right away they're compassionate. They let you know right away we care about you. Their number one promise is if you work for Anytime Fitness, you will never miss a monumental moment of your life. You'll never miss that graduation. You'll never miss your kid's softball tournament. You'll never miss that family reunion. They let you know that they care. They have so much loyalty at Anytime Fitness that over 4,000 employees have the tattoo of the logo of Anytime Fitness somewhere on their body. Does anybody in here have a tattoo of their company on their body? I was working this one group and a guy in the back of the room raised his hand and I said, do you have a tattoo? And he said, no, and I'm not getting one either. So why is that? He said, I work for a porta potty company. I said, I understand. I understand. So how can we all be a little bit more aware and intentional with, excuse me, I have a little cold, aware and intentional with the impact that we have? I'm going to put you to work here a little bit. I started doing something a few years ago called impact resolutions. And at our table, it was kind of interesting. We talked a little bit about New Year's resolutions, what we're going to try to do in 2024. I started doing impact resolutions, and they're different than New Year's resolutions. New Year's resolutions, many times, you're going to exercise more, you're going to read more, you're going to call your mom, whatever the case is. And if you're like me, by January 15th, you've already blown it. Impact resolutions are different. Every month, you take a value or a trait that will make you better at making an impact, that will make you more aware and intentional with how powerful that is, that will make you think about other people before you think about yourselves. When I first started it, my first impact resolution was to be less petty. Pettiness is a natural feeling. Somebody takes credit for something you did, you fire off an email, let everybody know you were part of that project. Someone's kid named captain of the hockey team should have been your kid, you raise a big stink. Every time I remember that impact resolution to myself, it really, really worked. It really, really worked. So what I want to ask you right now, and I'll go around the room, think of an impact resolution, a value or a trait that will help you raise your game to the next level in 2024. That will help you be more aware and intentional with the impact that you have with your friends, with your family, with your coworkers. I worked with a group in Iowa, and they decided to have accountability partners. And these two women decided that their first impact resolution was they were not going to gossip, because there was a lot of gossip within the office. And it worked like a charm. The entire month, they didn't gossip at all. When that month ended, boy, did they have a lot to talk about. So, does anybody have a value and impact resolution? I'm going to start off with Manny because I think I know what Manny is going to say. Manny, what is a value or trait that would help you?
I'm going to find people that are worth listening to, that I can learn from and profit from, and help build what they're doing.
See, and Manny is an expert on listening. That's why I went to Manny, because Manny's written this beautiful book called Listening Leaders. He's written 5 of them, but that's the only one I read. And it's like 300 pages. It took me 2 years, but I got through it, Manny. But here's the thing about listening. If you want to be a good leader, you better be a good listener. Right to your title. And the other thing that you learn is good listeners listen with their eyes and not their ears. You know, you can't be listening to somebody when you're on your phone or on your computer. Listen with your eyes instead of listening with your ears. And secondly, listen to learn instead of listening to respond. And I got that right out of Manny's book. You know, so many times we listen just so we can respond. If you listen to learn, you can pick up something. I always think of the late, great Sid Hartman. You know, Sid was not a very good listener, and I'll tell you what, he did not listen with his eyes, because when I was talking to Sid, he was always looking around to see if somebody more important was walking by. Sid had one of the great quotes of all time. He was talking about this guy who died of cancer, and he said, "Wow, the guy smoked like he smoked like a fish," which I think then means he drank like a chimney. But that's just okay. Who else has a trait? Who else has a trait? Yes. Joy in the journey. Explain.
Be shown in every single homework class, and that kids can just see Joe and what he did for Mike that day, and hopefully it just inspires them to say, you know what, I can see somebody sitting alone. There's no reason why they can't come sit at our table too.
That's fantastic. And I think sometimes we tend to forget that we need to relish that joy. When those moments happen, step back and realize this is a really good moment. You know, I interviewed Dan Buettner, because there's a difference between happiness and joy. And Dan Buettner wrote the book, The Blue Zones. And the Blue Zones is about people who live the longest. He also went and researched for an entire year the happiest people on the earth. And the happiest people on the earth, by the way, are in Denmark. But anyway, I said, so what did you learn? What did you change in your life after you spent a year trying to find out about happiness? And one thing he said was you got to relish joy. But he said what he did is he designed himself what he called an imaginary happiness box. And in this box were his goals, his values, the things he treasured in his life. And outside the box was all the other noise. And he said when it came to making a decision, if it fit in his happiness box, it was an easy yes. If it didn't, it was an easy no. It simplified his life. It helped him realize how to stay happy. Anybody else? Anybody else have something? Yes, yes.
That even in the darkest times,
2024,
there can be hope.
I've decided to focus on forgiveness and to talk. I work in a hospital, so I meet so many people, patients. My daughter doesn't talk to me, my son doesn't talk to me, all that kind of stuff. And I try to encourage my patients, my friends, forgive. Forgive. You will not have peace without forgiveness. And that's my mission.
And that is fantastic. And do you have a secret or a tip? Because forgiveness is awfully tough. You know, we all know that there are times we can get hurt, and normally you're getting hurt by the people who are closest to you.
You know, they also say that the most mature person forgives first. So usually these are relationships, we are very close to each other, but if you're mature, I challenge, that's the challenge I use, especially if you're a parent, it's hard to forgive each other. So it's really, when I work with them, we talk, we keep working with each other.
Fantastic. Let's hear it for all the quick little hand for the people volunteers. That's just fantastic. So what I encourage you to do is we're in January, plot out your year of impact resolutions. When I work with clients, I'll then send videos every month to keep the momentum going, to keep people thinking about, you know, how we can keep this top of mind. Because too many times we get back to the office and we're so busy, we get in our lives, we're so busy, we tend to forget what we really promised ourselves. And then if you want to do a whole connection exercise, do this with your team, because you're going to then find out what your team wants to work on. When I work with companies, I always tell the CEO, I said, sit in the back of the room for this exercise. Because if 10 people, if 10 tables come up with the word respect, guess what? You got a respect problem. So I said, make sure that you're a great listener so you can figure out where the holes are. Compassion. Don't be afraid to let people know you care. Nobody ever quit a job because they said, every time I turn around, somebody's patting me on the back. I'm leaving this joint. Let people know you care. Let people acknowledge that they are valuable. Connections. How can you make better connections? I think the best way to make connections is by trying to stay as positive and optimistic as you possibly can. I like to live by the 90-10 rule. Have you heard of the 90-10 rule? 90-10 rule is this thing, where you look and you say to yourself, 90% of my life, and I think everybody in this room is probably in there, somewhere around 90% of your life is good, if not great. And 10% needs a little work. We all have a little mess in our lives. Where people get out of whack is when they spend 90% of their time on the 10%. Spend 90% of your time on the good stuff, and that will help you become this person of positivity that radiates this positivity that people will want to connect with, that you can take your friendship to the next level. One of the best connectors I know is a guy by the name of Joe Mauer. Now, I told this story before, but this thing's going to have a couple of twists in here today. You know, Joe Mauer, 2 decades ago, was a senior at Cretin-Derham Hall High School in St. Paul. And one day, Joe noticed there was a young blind student eating lunch by himself. The next day, and the rest of that school year, Joe walked a guy by the name of Mike Hawley to the lunchroom, arm in arm, and had him sit down at his table. And I asked Joe, I said, why did you do that? And Joe's answer was very simple, but yet it was profound. He said it was because it was the right thing to do. Joe was not only showing compassion, he was making connections. So I started thinking, who did this have an impact on? So I found 6 guys who sat around that table every day. And then the stories started to come in. They said that Joe would walk Mike to his next class once lunch was over. Talk about impact. That table would fight over who had the pleasure of walking Mike to his next class once lunch was over. Wednesdays was pizza day at Cretin-Derham Hall. And Mike would invariably spill some crumbs on his clothing, some pizza sauce in his chin or his cheek. Joe Mauer would nonchalantly grab a napkin, wipe him off, brush him off, and get him ready for his next class. By the end of the first quarter, they were all doing this. These are high school kids, the most selfish creatures on God's green earth. But Joe was having an impact, and the impact he had was real, it was powerful, it was profound, it was contagious, and I guarantee you it lasts a long, long time. And for the proof of that, I have to re-sign on my computer. Elk River was designated as Energy City in Minnesota.
You guys coming for some pizza and ice cream?
And in the historic downtown, there is an energy that is palpable in one of the buildings.
Happy last day of school.
This is the home of the nonprofit agency called Thumbs Up for Mental Health.
Pizza and all the stuff is back here.
Katie Shatusky started this organization.
So our mission is we value life. We aspire to help others in our community by talking about mental health. Happy last day of school, even though it wasn't your last day of school.
The Teen After School Space is just one of 8 programs that Thumbs Up offers.
The whole thing kind of started with my grandfather.
Katie's grandfather, Bob, suffered depression
A silent battle.
and died of suicide.
I didn't know he had those demons. My grandmother didn't want to talk about how he died. And, you know, our family decided we're going to be honest. We're going to talk about it. We're going to have this conversation because it needs to be talked about. And I think that's essentially why my grandpa died. He didn't have the tools and the resources. And I think generationally speaking, it wasn't talked about. It wasn't acceptable. And my grandpa actually lost one of his brothers to suicide as well.
While Katie was struggling and searching for a sense of purpose,
My husband, Todd, gave me this amazing book and for Valentine's Day in 2014.
she read a story from the book Silent Impact.
He heard about it, maybe through the news or something, and then he's like, I just drove down to St. Paul and I had him sign it.
I happened to write the book and the story.
I couldn't put it down. And the one story that really stood out to me was Joe Mauer.
Yes, that Joe Mauer.
You know, bottom line is we need to win more games.
The Twins legend who played 15 years for his hometown team. Was a 6-time All-Star. Three-time batting champ and 2009 American League Most Valuable Player. The Twins retired his jersey. 21 years ago, Joe was a senior at Cretin-Derham Hall High School. He was one of the best high school athletes the state of Minnesota has ever produced. He was recruited by all the major college football programs to be their starting quarterback. He was an all-state guard in basketball. But baseball was Joe's best sport. And with the very first pick in the amateur draft, the Minnesota Twins took Joe Mauer.
You know, him going out of his way to invite Mike Halley to his lunch table.
In Joe's senior year, after his fourth-hour class, he invited and walked a student by the name of Mike Hawley to the lunchroom and invited him to sit down at his table. Mike is blind and normally sat alone at lunch. He was never alone again.
It's like, okay, how can I make a silent impact?
That story and her grandfather's tragedy
And then also help those families who have lost a loved one to suicide.
made an impact on Katie Shatuski.
And I thought, you know, if somebody like that could do something, why couldn't I do it? So I was actually out for a run one day, and I will never forget this moment. I actually stopped. I was on the Orono Bridge, and I stopped, and I snapped a picture of my shoes and hashtagged Run for Mental Health on social media. And that's kind of where my aha moment came.
21 years later, in the same high school, what did it mean to you to have Joe say, come and join us at our table?
It felt empowering, like I belonged.
In the same lunchroom, at the same table.
As my father was fond of saying, he kind of took me under his wing.
He took you under his wing. Guess what? He wants to reconnect with you, and he's here right now.
Hey, Mike. How you doing, man?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you. It's been too long.
You, yes.
Two friends reunited.
I was going to say, now what are you doing with yourself?
Well, I got 3 kids now.
It wasn't long before the two were walking down memory lane.
I remember you had to catch a red-eye flight from Anaheim.
And the hallways they navigated together almost every day 2 decades ago.
If more athletes followed his example, there'd be a lot fewer lonely kids without someone to eat with.
You treat people how you want to be treated. You treat people with respect, and usually that's returned. Same thing. Mike showed me that same respect.
The reunion was videotaped because Thumbs Up for Mental Health knows the power of this story.
As we shared lunch, and as the year progressed, I got to know him really well.
That it could change mindsets.
Walking in here, there's a lot of great memories.
And even change lives.
What I would love for that video to do is be shown in every single homeroom class, and that kids can just see Joe and what he did for Mike that day. And hopefully it just inspires them to say, you know what, I can see somebody sitting alone. There's no reason why they can't come sit at our table too.
So they are going to offer this video free to high schools and junior highs.
But our table was a lot of fun.
Joe said he was just doing the right thing by inviting Mike to his table. Maybe this video will help other kids do the right thing.
Thank you for the time you put in and the kindness you showed for the short year we did have together. And I'm a better person for it.
Well, Mike, I can say the same thing.
One more twist of serendipity in this story.
I love what you wrote in here too. It's just, you know, I think that maybe even really made it stronger for me. Katie, your grandfather had a big impact on me with his humor and energy. I miss my buddy. Happy Valentine's Day and go make an impact. I mean, I felt like you were telling me what I should do.
Katie's grandfather, Bob Schmit, no relation, we were good friends.
From the outside looking in, like, you would never know that he struggled. I don't think you knew, and you were good friends with him.
I took your grandfather parasailing on a double parasail.
Oh, gosh.
He wanted nothing to do with it, but I said, we're doing it, Bob. So I made Bob do stuff. The Thumbs Up charity is proof that even in the darkest times, there can be hope.
And how can we turn a dark topic into something light and bright? And that's where the thumbs up comes from, because that was kind of my grandpa's thing, was a thumbs up. We'd go to his house and he always had a smile on his face with a thumbs up.
Tony Leisman was at our table, and he says hello, by the way.
Good.
An unselfish act of kindness.
And then this is all the resources for
And a
you.
woman with a purpose prove that you don't have to move on.
I just think he would be so proud.
Love you.
When you move forward,
I know, I was so glad.
amazing things can happen.
I think he wishes he would have stayed, I would hope. But hopefully he knows his legacy is moving on in a
Oh,
different
he's
way.
looking on.
Did you do thumbs up?
We gotta believe he's looking on.
Yeah, I think he'd be looking down with a big thumbs up, I hope.
But wait, there's more. Thumbs Up for Mental Health has started a program called No One Sits Solo. It is now in 3 school districts in the North Metro, Elk River, Ramsey, and Anoka, where they have a lot of problems with kids suffering with depression. I was approached by the publisher of my book, and we came up with an idea. And next week, a children's book that Joe Mauer and I put together is going to come out. Scott, if you could pass those out. We had a really tough time deciding what to call it. The name of the book is The Right Thing to Do. Now, the beautiful thing about this book is I was able to get enough sponsorship. As a matter of fact, Casey Carlson here from Blaze Credit Union always steps up. They're one of our sponsors. 100% of the proceeds of this book are going to 2 charities, Thumbs Up for Mental Health and the Highland Friendship Club, which is Joe Mauer's favorite charity. On top of that, we have groups and organizations and people who are buying books that we are donating to schools. For example, like an Optimist Club in Roseville might decide to say, let's buy a bunch of books so we can put them in 1st and 2nd graders in Roseville School District. If you want to do that, we will take care of it. I am presenting at the Minnesota Elementary Principals Association in February to 500 elementary schools in Minnesota. Every single principal is walking out with a couple of books. So we're going to have Zumbrota to Albany. So it's going to be all over the state of Minnesota. So the goodness and the story continues. So now we all don't have the bandwidth that Joe Mauer has. And my goodness, if I have one prayer for this entire thing, it's on January 23rd. The book launches on January 20th. The book is now available at joemauerbook.com. You can pre-order it. But on January 23rd, Joe's going to find out whether he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Can you imagine if we catch that wave, how many books we can sell and how big an impact we can have on these charities. And quite frankly, the values in this book are just so good. And so many times I think our young kids sometimes miss out on those values. So hopefully this really has a huge, huge impact. But we all don't have the bandwidth, Joe, but we do have the bandwidth in our own friendship group, in our own volunteer groups, in our own workplace. What we all got to do is be more aware and intentional with our impact and make sure that we make a silent impact. I always say we make our biggest impressions when we're not trying to be impressive. Connections. Do what you can to connect with people. You got to work on it sometimes. And sometimes you got to forgive. Sometimes you got to listen. Sometimes you got to find the joy, whatever it is, do your impact resolutions around it. Last but not least is clarity. And clarity is the catalyst of growth. And you know how sometimes, I know Scott Plum, the Mr. Sales expert, I'm sure he will tell you that a confused buyer doesn't buy, correct? Absolutely. A confused employee doesn't produce. People need to know what their role is and why that role is important to the team. And as I mentioned earlier, in today's day and age, it has to be for the greater good. The younger generation doesn't buy socks. They buy Bombas, because for every pair of Bombas you buy, they give a pair to some people who need socks. That's what the new generation wants, this cause marketing effect. And if you're not thinking about that as a leader, you're not thinking right. And you're not taking your business to the next level. You gotta be able to take a chance now and then. How many of you, I came with special effects and everything here. Oh yeah. How many of you know what these are? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. How many of you still have a pair of Zubas? All right. That's good. Your wife hasn't lost them in the wash yet, or you? Your Zubas were invented right here in Roseville. I don't know if you knew that. Anybody know that? There was a gym in Roseville, Minnesota. It was a big weightlifting gym. That's where you got them, huh? There you go. Run by Dan and Bob, yep.
Let's see him exercise right now.
So anyway, they were these were big, bulky, strong weightlifters. And they just didn't like the sweatpants that you could get at Walmart or Target or wherever you went shopping for your sweatpants. So one of the guys knew how to sew. He took some zebra fabric and he sewed a pair of these crazy pants. Well, the next thing he knew, everybody in the gym wanted a pair of these Zubas. Well, these guys were no dummies. In the late 80s and early 90s, they turned this little goofy pants into a $100 million a year business. You know, and it was a great business success. They saw a problem, they had a solution, and then they executed on the plan. But I'm not here to talk about their success as a business. I'm here to talk about their tagline. Zuba had a great tagline. Their tagline was, "Dare to be different." And if you wore these to church on Sunday, you were daring to be different. But the reason I like that is I think sometimes we get more fearful than fearless. And if you want to take your game to the next level, if you want to take your business to the next level, you got to be willing to take some chances. You got to be fearless. If you are comfortable, you are playing it too safe. I'm reading a book right now. It's a great book called The Comfort Crisis. And it talks all about people getting too comfortable. What are you going to do to push yourself in 2024 so you can take your game to the next level? So you're more fearless than fearful. See, people are afraid of change. Bear with me. Everybody do this. Fold your hands like this. Okay, now put the top thumb on the bottom and the bottom thumb on top. You know, just that little move right there is just a little bit uncomfortable. You see, that's a good metaphor for change. If you're not a little bit uncomfortable, you're not pushing yourself. You're not daring to be different, to push your game to the next level. Now, before I close off, they wanted to make sure I had some time for Q&A, and then I'll close it off. So I'd like to open up the questions and answers. You can ask me anything about what I talked about. You can throw some sports questions in there and go from there. Yes, sir. A good question. The question is on AI, and I got to be honest, I don't know it or understand it and haven't used it yet, but it's here. It's not coming. It's here. And it's a little bit like the internet. There's some really good stuff out of it, and there's some really bad stuff out of it. So it's how are you going to manage it? But I still think throughout everything, the human connection is the most important thing. I always say, ask one more question. If you are talking about the weather, you're not making a connection. Go deeper. Go deeper. You know, find out if they like fishing and you like fish, find out a commonality. When you have that commonality, you can talk about that all the time. I do this bingo game a lot of times with my clients. And I put a bunch of traits on there and have people walk around, and then I say, how many of you found out something about somebody you didn't know before that you've worked with? And about 75% of the room raises their hand. I said, now you found out you're both Star Wars fans. You have something to talk about more than the weather. But anyway, am I afraid of AI? A little bit, but I think that, you know, I think we have to learn to embrace it because it's here. Yes?
Is Joe going to make it?
Is Joe going to make the Baseball Hall of Fame? Boy, I hope so.
This year?
This year, yeah. Joe will be a Hall of Famer, whether or not it's this year. And right now, Joe is trending to be a Hall of Famer. You need 75% of the vote. And right now, Joe is at the votes that have been reported. He's at 82%, which means he needs 70% of the remaining 250 votes out there. Now, the thing is, there are some voters who don't think that unless you were the most dominant player for 10 years, that you don't deserve to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And some of those people aren't letting people know who they vote on their ballots. So I have been looking for places in Cooperstown for 4 days. And VRBO did a very smart thing. You can't rent it, and then if I rent it now and I cancel it on January 23rd, I have to pay 50%. so I'm going to wait on that one. The question was about how the business has changed, and it really has, because locker rooms used to be open, reporters could walk around wherever. Now, when, for example, you got a player like Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins, the big name players. Justin Jefferson talks on Thursday, Kirk Cousins talks on Wednesday, and then after the game. And it's always in a news conference thing. Justin Jefferson doesn't know my name. Kirk Cousins does, he's been around enough, a little bit closer to Asia, we've talked on the side kind of thing. You know, it's just a whole different. We're back when I was covering Scott Studwell and Joey Browner and Chuck Foreman and whatever, all these guys, you know, you knew your name and you had a relationship, and then it became trust. But I think it's you just show up, you keep showing up. But I think the biggest change that's really happened as far as covering sports is something really nobody's talking about. That the teams now are producing their own media. So the teams, in a way, are competing against us. They want clicks on their internet site. They want Twitter followers. They want people on their Instagram. They do TikTok videos. And they would much rather have people go to theirs than ours. And they get exclusive content. For example, when Kevin O'Connell was named the head coach, they had all this video of Kevin O'Connell walking around meeting all the people. Well, the first look we had at Kevin O'Connell was at the news conference. So the teams are now in the media business. So, and it's even in the TV business, the ratings are important, but they're not as important now as the clicks. You know, how viral can your story go? So that's kind of where it's at. Okay. Muhammad Ali is one guy I did interview once, but my clients, I speak to a lot of associations, leadership groups, companies. I come in for culture and impact. It's just, this is a momentum business. When you speak, somebody sees you speak and they say, hey, we ought to bring you in. And that's kind of what happens there. I belong to the National Speakers Association with Manny. We have a great group of people. We trade leads. We get to know people. You figure out how to market. So, but I've been very, very lucky, and I continue. I'm a good listener because I listen to what people want. Because if I just get up and tell stories about me, that's not what it's all about, you know. So, and when I first started speaking, I would tell the win one for the Gipper stories and what it was like to be in the locker room in '87 and '91, and all of a sudden I realized, you know, I was dislocating my arm, patting myself in the back, you know. So I changed everything, and then that's when it all changed. Muhammad Ali, 1991 Super Bowl. Muhammad Ali walks into the convention center. He's got some appearance there. And honest to God, it was the first time in my life I ever had a feeling that I was in the presence of something supernatural. And anyway, so he was not really, I had about 3 minutes with him. He fake boxed with me a little bit, and he was, you know, already losing some of his verbal skills. But it was just, you know, I don't get nervous for interviews anymore. I walked out of there sweating like a hog. It was unbelievable. So, yeah, he was the king. I think I got to be done. One more question, then I better go. Yeah, and he was talking about how players back in the old days, you know, Bill Boom Boom Brown every offseason had a job. You know, all the North Stars, they all had jobs in the offseason because they weren't getting paid enough money to play pro sports. And that's why I think when you really hear, if you listen to a lot of coaches, they talk about they want somebody who loves the game. They love football. They love baseball. They love the process, because that's the kind of guy, even if they're making $1 million, $10 million, or $10, they're still going to go out there and compete, and that competitive parts of it. But it's interesting. You mentioned coaches. I had both Tony Dungy and Brian Billick as regulars on my show. There couldn't be two coaches further apart. Tony was cool, calm, collected. He's never sworn in his life. Billy couldn't order a hot dog without swearing, you know, and was bombastic and what have you. They both won Super Bowls. And I believe that they both won Super Bowls for this reason. Everybody on the team knew their role. They were able to build this team together that they knew if they did their role, they were helping everybody. And they got people to buy into the unselfishness it takes to be a team. So I'm just going to close off by saying, one of the things that I'd like to do, and I think that sometimes this really works because I think we all need a mantra or a tenet, something to live by. And when I work with companies or groups, we try to get there because you want a feeling that people get. You know, what is that value? A lot of times companies will put up, 6 core values. That's fine. But do something that's memorable and repeatable. For example, one company I worked with, they come up with the idea, flourish. We're here to help everybody flourish. They use it in all their communications. It's repeatable, it's memorable, it's almost a joke. Another company did belong, belong, belong. And when you think about it, if you want to have healthy, happy, productive people, especially in today's age where a lot of people are dealing with mental health issues, everybody needs a place to belong. Another company came up with, what can I do to make your day better? One company came up with Hakuna Matata, which means they were Lion King fans. But it was really just like learn to let it go. You know, there will be another day. We have to come back and do it tomorrow. So sometimes I think if we all come up with our personal mantra, that, you know, mine is 1% better. You know, just try to get 1% better every day. I know that's impossible, but you can at least try. You can at least try, because we all make mistakes, we all fail. Just try to learn by that. One last quick story, and then I just wanted to, then I'll just close off. In the back, I have books if people want books, but I also came up with this cheat sheet if you want to grab it. We did research with some companies, and I have questions in compassion, connections, and clarity that I encourage companies to survey on. And then we'll go back 6 months later and do the survey again to see how we've done. Under compassion, have you received positive feedback in the last 10 days? Does this organization put people over profits? Does this organization reward success and effort? Under connections, do you have a really good friend at work? And every one of these questions has stats behind it that tells you you really need to do this. Would you recommend a friend apply for a job at your organization? That's a big question. And we scale it on 1 to 5, and we see where we're at, and that's where we know the holes are in the organization. Because every organization, every family, this organization, we have a gap. And this is the gap. The gap is the culture you have right now. Even if it's a great culture, you still want to get up here. What are you doing to fill that gap? Because culture is a living, breathing organism within your organization, and you need to work on it all the time. In the last area in compassion, some of the questions we have, are you crystal clear on what your role is and why it's important? Is management transparent? Are you proud to work here? So if you want these questions, I'll have those in back for you. And I'll just kind of close it on a quote from Jackie Robinson. And Jackie Robinson has a quote that I just love. He said, "A life isn't significant except for its impact on others." So go make an impact. Go figure out a way to take your game to the next level. Go figure out how you can help your group or organization have a world-class culture. Thank you very much. I'm glad I got to come back here again. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Thank you, buddy. Thanks, buddy.
Joe, do you